Hey, what are you doing here?
I'm drinking coffee, talking to you. I'm scanning the web. If you're going to train for something, you got to train for something.
Then I'd basically be qualified to suffer the massive climb and massive descent the rest of the way.
That's not fun anymore. But we don't have to just talk about ultra running, right?
Maybe I need to just shoot for the 100.
Do whatever. It's more fun. It's like less stressful too.
And then think about what did I step on along the way.
What? Did you just say what? That's pretty funny. See, I'm not doing 5 races a year now because I love my family. So great. It's wonderful. He's not doing his races. We feel so bad. Talk about anything we want. Like, did you wake up? Did you take a crap this morning? How was it? Things like that. I think that's all I want to really talk about is, we can involve a lot of people and maybe take some questions.
Yeah, this is the Ultra Diner.
The Ultra Diner. Hello to all those listeners out there, especially those of you who are cool enough to listen to the first 2 of our interview episodes. I'm at the Ultra Diner today with my exceptionally awesome co-host and probably the 1,222nd best voice, if not worse, in podcast radio, working now or anytime in the history of podcasting, Ruel Abadam. What's up, Ruel? How's it going?
What is up, Tony? What is up?
Today's a good day, man. Today we've got another one of those one-on-one coffee breaks with a guest that I am super, super excited to have on, because this guy is not only a good friend of mine who I kind of grew up in ultra running with, and actually my kids grew up with his daughter in ultra running with, but this guy does it all. I mean, this guy is a real estate artist, a 6-time international bestselling author, a Philanthro-Capitalist. That's right. All you socialist new green dealers, watch out. He's an actor. He's an aspirational speaker. And we're going to talk about this. He's a recent owner of, yes, a flamethrower. He is the Frank McKinney. Welcome, Frank. Glad to have you.
Well, Tony, anything that has the name Ultra in front of it, I'm down talking about. It doesn't matter what the topic is. Life should be ultra. And no matter what your biography reads or your title is, the word ultra should go in front of it. So thanks for having me on your fantastic show today.
I love it. We honestly have like no script here at all. We kind of just talk and chat and kind of see where it goes. And I was super excited that you said yes when I texted you to ask you to come on, because you are one of those people that is a true inspiration to me. And I kind of look at you and your family and where you came from and where you are. And I really look at that and say, wow, this guy really took so little and made so much out of it. And you continue to do it today. So I'm really excited to have you on and start getting into your background and really what makes you tick.
Yeah, we've known each other, if I'm not mistaken, for 13 years. Was it 2006?
At least.
At Badwater?
I think probably 13 years. I mean, you got there way before I got there. I got there in 2008. When I crewed, and then when I crewed, and then 2009 when I ran my first one, and then we spent 7 straight years out there together in one form or the other.
Yeah.
But
I remember clearly when we first met. We met, then if it was 2009 on the course, we were, I remember, like, I can see it. We had already passed Father Crawley. We were maybe 3 miles away from mile 91 checkpoint at Keeler, at the Darwin turnoff. And you and I were at that little valley, and we were together. We were talking, and we were struggling. I remember clearly it was when the race used to start in the daytime, and we were chatting it up for a while there. We were together for miles and miles that day, and I think you ended up finishing ahead of me, or you were passing me at the time we were talking. And yeah, remember like it was yesterday. 10 years. Yeah,
ago. It wasn't too much ahead of you, like maybe like 40 minutes or so. I mean, you and I have spent so much time on that course together. I've even seen you passed out at like mile 132 or 33, going up to the finish line on the side of the road, stop over and talk to you. You know, we've seen a lot of each other.
Yeah,
on the course.
That was 2011. Yep, yeah. I remember that. That was the year I was paced to break my record, and I had fainted at I'd never fainted in my life, dating back to when I was a teenager drinking a ton of alcohol. I mean, I'd never passed out in my entire life until mile 1 3-1 of the 135 mile Badwater Ultramarathon. I was at like 38 hours. So my goal was to break 40, which I hadn't done. My prior best was 40 hours and 20 minutes. And out of nowhere, everything turned black. My face hit the pavement right before. This was before they had a checkpoint, I think, at mile 131. Remember, you used to check in at Dalvilla and then go to the finish line. And I just was, my arms, I couldn't get my arms down to stop my head from hitting the pavement, my face from hitting the pavement. And scared the daylights out of me because I didn't faint for long. But when I came to, I couldn't get my breath. I was up at elevation. We were probably around 8,000 feet at the time. Crew was panicking. That was the year that my wife was obviously the crew chief. She's been my crew chief for all my Badwater races. But my entire crew was made up of my family. So my brother and 2 sisters and my wife. So my blood family wanted me to drop out because, I was looking horrible, bloody and all that. And my wife said, no way, we're not doing this. So they drove me down, assumed it was an elevation issue. I was just lightheaded from being up at elevation. I live in Florida. And we staked out and we drove down to Dalvilla until I could get my heart rate set and start breathing normal again for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And then went back out, pulled my stake out of the ground, we realized I couldn't get my heart rate up. It wasn't wise to get my heart rate up again. Every time I did so, I felt faint again. And so my wife held my hand and we walked at like a mile and a half an hour from mile 131 to mile 134. And then at mile 134, I saw, it was at night, I saw the lights of the finish line and I got excited and I started running again. And there I went at 134.3. I went down again. And I fainted again. And I thought, you know how you are, Tony, when you're that close and you're out of your mind at that point, right? You're sleep deprived. Your thoughts aren't rational. I thought I would be that guy who got to mile 134 and DNF'd. I thought forever I was going to be known as that guy who made it all the way there. And he, passed out and couldn't finish. And I remember getting up. My brother was on one side, right hand. My wife was on the other. And there's a picture, matter of fact, it's right by my desk of us crossing the finish line, holding hands. But really what they were doing, like I was pushing down on their hands. They were holding probably, 100 of my 180 pounds as I crossed that finish line. And I didn't even get close to the 40 hours. I think it was like 43 hours or something. But that's, you saw me at mile 131 when I was out.
I did. I remember we were coming up and we would always look for your van when you were ahead of us and always look behind for when you were coming up and leapfrogging because we were so close. And I remember it's like, oh, there's Frank's van. And there was this little cutout. And I think it was Mills. I was like, oh, how's Frank doing? Oh, not good. He's laying down over there. And I went to see you and you said something like, I passed out or something like that. And you're just like, oh, you go ahead. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Yeah, I remember that. We shared a lot of stuff on that course. It's good stuff. But I read something about you that's really interesting. I'm going to go way back before you even knew what Badwater was. I read somewhere that you went to 4 different high schools when you were a kid, and 3 of them asked you to leave, and that you snagged that high school diploma with this robust, like 1.8 GPA. And then you left where you lived with $50 in your pocket. And today, all of a sudden, you are so accomplished in so many different things. Tell me about that back when you were a kid and how crazy that was to walk out of your house with $50 in your pocket. And what you had to go through to kind of initially make it. And I want you to tell everybody too, what you do from a business perspective. You're not just an author and an actor and a speaker, but you're in the real estate business. So why don't you tell everybody what you do in the real estate business and kind of how it started back when you were graduated high school with that 1.8 GPA.
Yes, so you're accurate. I was born in Indiana. I'm the oldest of 6. Born on a farm, a little town called Carmel, Indiana. And I had a pretty troubled upbringing, a troubled childhood, a youth, a juvenile delinquent, being being sent to those 4 high schools in 4 years. One of them was run by Jesuit priests. The other one was a big public high school. My third high school was run by Benedictine monks in the city of Canyon City, Colorado. Then I ended up graduating from another public high school in Indiana. So, in life, you get a chance to grab what I refer to as the imaginary eraser. So picture your iPhone. It looks kind of like an eraser. You turn around or your Android or whatever you use, turn around to the chalkboard of life, and you only have a few chances or a few opportunities really in life to turn around and say, I'm done with this behavior. I am erasing what I did, and I'm starting over. And at 18, after going through those 4 high schools in 4 years and also spending a lot of time in juvenile detention halls, I turned around with that imaginary eraser, got on a plane with a $50 bill and a one-way plane ticket from Indianapolis, Indiana, and landed in West Palm Beach at 18 with that 1.8 GPA and no hope of pursuing a formal education. Back then, a community college wouldn't even take me. And so, I had to kind of hit the reset button. And as a youth, and even to this day, but back then, I had kind of an addiction to excitement. And when you have, everybody likes to be excited, but for me, it took on a form of a mainline adrenaline rush that I had to have, or else I felt unfulfilled. And back then, Tony, it took the form of very self-destructive behavior, getting arrested and getting locked up and causing my beautiful mother to turn prematurely gray because of all the trouble I was getting in. So when I landed in Florida, and I teach this, a lot of the places that I speak at. Matter of fact, I gave a commencement speech where I used this part of this talk recently, where people say you change. People say that you need to change. You need to change your ways. Well, most psychiatrists, including Sigmund Freud says we are who we are past the age of 3. That's your development. And after 3, you kind of are established as to who you are the rest of your life. Other psychiatrists say, you can alter your behavior up to about the age of 12. After that, you are pretty much who you are the rest of your life. I believe that. And I believe that had I not found a constructive outlet for a destructive tendency, meaning being addicted to excitement in a destructive form, I found an outlet in South Florida that allowed me to basically stay the person I was, meeting that excitement. And I build, and have for the last 30 years, I build very large, well, not large anymore, but very expensive direct oceanfront mansions or homes on speculation. Meaning I buy the land, my wife and I design the house, we build, not with our own hands, but we build the house, and we don't have a buyer in mind, Tony. We like the field of dreams. We build it and we hope they will come. We believe they will come. And I've done it. I've done 44 projects, oceanfront projects in Palm Beach County over the last 30 years. Matter of fact, the one I'm building now is my final masterpiece. And the average selling price is around $14.5 million. And it's all on spec. So meaning I'm taking the bank, the IRS, and my wife are the only partners I have. I don't have partners. I'm not a good partner guy, but I don't have a buyer in mind. So I put, tens of millions of dollars out there at risk with the hopes and belief that an ultra wealthy buyer will appreciate my artistry, my oceanfront artistry built on that sun-drenched canvas called the Atlantic Ocean, 3-dimensional art, and I'll be rewarded with a payday. And so really, if you think about it, I'm still the same guy back as an 18, 19-year-old who needed that excitement. Back then it was self-destructive. For the last 30 years, it's been constructive. I still am very excited about what I do. I mean, let's face it, I don't know when I'm going to get paid and haven't for 30 years. And if I'm wrong with my design choice or my marketing or my location, well, I can crash and burn at any time. And I think that finding that constructive outlet for anybody who has the tendency, any kind of addictive tendency, is a wonderful way to find the satisfaction and make a living at it at the same time.
Do you find that you have difficulty in the consumer, the buyer that you're kind of catering to, that you're looking for, is on that high end, and is more of a wealthy type individual that's going to be able to afford a $14 or $15 or $16 million piece of property?
Do I find it difficult in what way?
You find it more difficult from a real estate perspective in that your pool of buyers are probably much smaller than the average person looking for a house.
Yep. Yeah. So let's back up. I didn't start building oceanfront. I skipped over a big part of my early career. When I started in real estate in 1986, I've been building on the ocean since 1992. But in 1986, I did my first fixer-ups, or my first flip, my first crack house. I mean, before the word flip was even a term, back in the late 80s, I was, and Nilsa too, we were buying houses in bad neighborhoods, fixing them up and flipping them. Tony, for the first 5 years of my career, I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000. I jumped from $100,000 to $2.2 million.
Right. So you bought fixer-uppers, flipped them up, and kind of started as your base, right? And then you gradually, over time, move forward. Must have been an easier. Well, of course, depends on the market, but you're marketing to a group of people with the fixer-uppers. That's probably a lot larger than these incredibly gorgeous oceanfront properties.
It is and it isn't. Let me tell you how it is and it isn't. Let's put our real estate, kind of teaching hat on for a minute. There's two segments of the real estate marketplace that are relatively recession-proof. It's the first-time home buyer, and it's the ultra-wealthy buyer. If you go back, and I did this in one of my books, I studied 6 different real estate cycles dating back to the mid-'70s, and I found that since the Roman era, the first-time home buyer, the entry-level buyer, the woman who works as a teacher and the guy who works for county sanitation, who are employed, who have decent credit, who have decent, a recurring monthly income, those people, you have two choices: to rent the American dream or to own the American dream. And to my mind, the American dream was never meant to be rented. It was meant to be owned. And for 5 years, Tony, I taught people and showed people through my own inventory how they could own the American dream for less than first, last, and security. You could take your first month's rent, your last month's rent, and security, add it up, use that as a down payment to own the American dream. And so it worked great. And if you read, there's one of my favorite authors is Malcolm Gladwell. And in Gladwell's book, Blink, he states that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. And if you look back, or if you do the math, 10,000 hours is 5 years full time. Well, for 5 years, I didn't do a house worth more than $100,000, but I got to be an expert at the craft of real estate. Then I jumped from $100,000 to $2.2 million. That was the first oceanfront house I did. I didn't do anything in between. Now, the other segment of the real estate marketplace that is recession-proof is the ultra-wealthy. They too have been around since the Roman era. And what I have found is, yes, there's more, Tony, there's more buyers for that entry-level home in terms of number. But how many houses are there out there going after those buyers? There's millions of them. At my level, in let's say Palm Beach County, the south of France, the town Riviera, Malibu, Beverly Hills, I know almost every direct oceanfront high-end home on the market. There's not a lot of people out there going out after what it is that I provide. Therefore, I think the numbers are skewed in my favor. I would rather play at that level because I'm competing with against so few properties that are like what I build.
Right, that's interesting. That's a different perspective on it, and it makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense. So you started with fixer uppers, and then you created this empire. Why'd you choose real estate as something that you wanted to get into? Was there anything in particular? Did you have a mentor that kind of guided you to get in?
Yeah, it was very clear. Before I was even in real estate, I was a tennis instructor. Well, actually, I was a maintenance worker turned tennis instructor, and I made a great living way before I met Nilsa when I moved to Florida as a tennis pro. And I was not a touring pro, but I was a tennis instructor at some very affluent communities in Boca Raton and in South Florida, in Palm Beach County. And Tony, I was teaching very affluent people how to hit a better forehand and a backhand. And I'm young, I'm impressionable, I'm consumeristic, I'm materialistic. And these people are driving to their tennis lessons in Bentleys and Ferraris and, Lamborghinis. They have $1 million homes and yachts. It was back in the time. I mean, you're a little younger than me, but you'll remember Lifestyle of the Rich and Famous, that show on TV.
Sure.
And I would watch that at night. And then during the day, as I'm teaching somebody how to hit a better serve, I'm watching people who are living it. I just came from Indiana, from a farm, and here's people driving these fancy cars, have beautiful wives and beautiful husbands and kids and yachts and dogs and, how'd you get here is what I wanted to ask, but I couldn't because they're way over 45 feet on the other side of the net. And then when Tony's done with his tennis lesson, then it's Ruel's turn. I give Ruel a tennis lesson. After Ruel, it's somebody else. Well, when I was teaching tennis, and I was making $100,000 a year as a tennis instructor right when I turned 20, I realized that most of these people weren't in the kind of physical shape that I was in. So let's say I'm teaching Tony how to hit a better forehand for an hour lesson that he paid for. He drove to his lesson in a fancy car, had the yacht, the mansion, the wife and all. And I thought, I need to learn from Tony. So I would tire you out, Tony, purposely after 45 minutes of an hour-long lesson. So you could not finish the lesson. But in those last 15 minutes, over a 2-year span, with a bunch of students like Tony, successful students, tennis students, I earned my PhD in entrepreneurship and ultimately my master's in real estate by picking your brain. And Tony, what you often told me, and a lot of my students told me is, I'll paraphrase, they were 9-to-5ers as a lawyer or as an inventor or as a doctor or whatever, but they took their discretionary income and invested in real estate. And I heard those stories, an anecdotal real estate ending to their stories for a disproportionate number of times. In other words, most people's wealth was created through some form of investment, some kind of real estate. And after hearing that for 2 years, I said, okay, I got to do this because all these rich people that I'm teaching tennis to, they've invested in real estate. It's time that I do it too.
That's great. Did you, when you started in real estate and similar to when you're running an ultramarathon and you hit wall after wall after wall and you question why you're there and what you're doing, did you have in the early stages or at any time during the stages of your real estate career, those moments where you questioned what you were doing, what you were getting into, and really had to overcome those doubts to keep going?
I'd say yes. I mean, being a tennis pro, and I was a competitive tennis player, so I was very competitive, and I kind of had that competitive edge or desire when I started real estate. Tony, I started early considering myself a real estate artist. Like I never liked the name developer or builder or investor. Even my $50,000 crack houses that I was renovating, I put 3 coats of paint on the walls, and I put grass sod instead of grass seed, and I put a new roof on instead of just patching the hole on the roof. And, instead of standing up the old mailbox, I bought a new mailbox. $20 yard carpet instead of $10 yard carpet. I made them nice. And at that point, the only thing I question sometimes, and I still do to this day, am I making it too nice? Am I over improving it? Am I going over my budget? But I encourage people, regardless of their line of work, take an artist approach to your craft. And using real estate as an example, if you want to be a great artist, and if you have the capability and the talent to be a great artist, when you go to the art store, the art supply store, do you buy the cheapest paintbrush? Do you buy the watered down paint? Do you buy a palette that isn't deep and rich? No, you buy the best stuff because you're proud of the art that you're about ready to paint, assuming you're a painter. I took the same approach. And now to this day, the house, this final masterpiece I'm building at 3492SouthOcean.com, if you want to see it, 3492SouthOcean.com. I'm spending about $1,000 a square foot, my cost, to build the house. That's insane. So if there was ever any doubts, and there still is doubts, is I'd rather err on the side of making sure that I was holding true to that artistic approach rather than cutting corners and just being bottom line driven.
That's great, because being in real estate myself on the legal side of it, and being a home buyer myself, I often see a lot of cutting corners when it comes to residential units, especially to maximize profit on the part of the builder and developer. But your artistry is very apparent in everything you do. I mean, I remember when you had your Aquiliana property on the market, which sold for something like $25 million. That thing had a 2,000-gallon aquarium wet bar built into it, and cascading water coming in, and fish on the floor, and it was absolutely incredible. I mean, it's pretty clear that you spend a lot of time designing this. Do you get all of the inspiration for this? Does Nilsa work in with you? Do you have a team of artists working with you, or is a lot of this just coming from, Frank McKinney's brain?
A little of both, a little of all of the above, Tony. I will tell you, just as a general lesson to those listening. So when you come up in the world of life, you are taught, or you're made to believe that you are either a numbers-driven, statistical, analytical, spreadsheet-driven, left-brained individual, or you're creative and you don't have any access to the numbers. I've talked to so many people, partners. Oh, he's the creative, I'm the numbers guy. He's the business guy, and I'm the creative. I think that's a crock. That basically you're surrendering one side of your brain or the other. Now, when I came into the world as a businessman, I will admit that I was a right brain person. Left brain person. I was the numbers guy. I was a number cruncher. I was I was not artistic until I realized I need to develop my right brain. And I did. Not almost, I would say to the point where Iadocoliana, the house you use as an example, it took me a little while to sell it because I think my right brain got a little carried away. Like the water floor that I built there, where you walked in the front door and you're actually walking on water, to the 10,000 pounds can be on this glass floor that I had with 18 inches of water beneath you. People got vertigo. People got, the older people got a little busy. And I realized, Frank, your right brain got a little carried away. And the last 5 years, I've tried to kind of hone the left brain back, kind of work on that to make sure that, listen, I'm an artist, but I don't want to be a starving artist. And so I have to make money at these things, and my margins need to be so. So I think you can train both sides of the brain, and I have them now acutely trained, where I'll look at a deal with the left side first and make sure that it makes sense, that I can make a decent margin, that the comps are going to bear out what I'm going to ask for it. But when it comes to, listen, if I'm delivering to an ultra wealthy buyer, I have to deliver to an ultra wealthy buyer something that they don't know they want yet. Like I have to know what they want before they know they want it. And to do that, there are certain rooms and certain aspects that really do have to flush out that over the top artistic approach. Now, like today on social media, I don't know when this is going to run, but on March 19th, if you go to my social media feed, you'll see I posted a video of a jellyfish sphere. And it's the only one in a private residence in the entire world. And that's exactly as it says. It's a 5-foot diameter jellyfish sphere where the 20 jellyfish swim around and they change colors based upon the LED light that's underneath them. And it's the first thing you see when you walk in the front door. It's extremely artistic. And so the kitchen countertops are 11,000-year-old countertops from France that are lava, blue lava. I mean, nobody has stuff like that. So now, am I doing that because I personally love that style for my consumption? The answer is no. You've been to my house, I think, right? I live in a house that was built in 1930. Yeah, sure. It's very different. It's like the antidote to what I build. If you hated what I did for a living, it's the complete opposite. But these ultra wealthy buyers, they want something that they'll know nobody else has. Basically, destroying the mold after I'm done with it, and they have the only version in existence.
That's amazing. I mean, if anybody listening to this wants to go take a look at some of the projects that Frank does, his website, I think it's Frank-McKinney, McKinney.com, and you can click through the Ocean Artistry tab and look at the estate homes that have been sold and the ones that are for sale. And some of them are really just exceptional. I mean, the quality is just great. But I see what you mean by, this is for a consumer that wants something that nobody else has. It's almost like if somebody ultimately ends up buying like the Neverland or, some superstar's house that's just so unique, or a castle somewhere that, one person is going to own something like that. It's really great stuff.
Hey, diners, how's it going? I hope you are enjoying that cup of coffee at the diner. If you like the podcast, please do share it with people you know. We would love it if you would head over to Apple Podcasts, give a rating and a review. While we're at it, The Ultra Diner is online on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, all at The Ultra Diner. That's all one word, at The Ultra Diner.
But now you're on your final oceanfront masterpiece, right? So you're now doing your last one, 3492 South Ocean Boulevard, which is on South Palm Beach. Was this it for you? This is the last project that you're going to do as far as the real estate construction. So
this is it.
Why did you decide to call it quits in the real estate world? And what are you going to do with all your time now that you have?
Well, I'm certainly not going to run more ultramarathons. That's for darn sure. I'm struggling as it is. But I will tell you, so yes, for those of you listening, go to 3492SouthOcean.com. So it's the number 3492 South Ocean, spelled out, SouthOcean.com. And you can see, some of the videos we've got up there, the progress videos, the descriptions, the images, they're fantastic. And I'll be done with that project, in a couple months. So here's what I decided to do on retiring from oceanfront building. Again, 30 years is a long time. Doesn't mean it's a magical number that I got to stop. So I am better at what I do than I've ever been. Tony, I have more passion for what I do now than I have ever. I mean, I just feel like I'm so discerning and so aware. My awareness and discerning quotient is off the charts because of all this experience. I want to go out. Like most people retire when they're burnt out. And then guess what they have to do? They have to, kind of like a flywheel, they have to regenerate that passion and that, fire. Well, I have plenty of it. I'm just simply going to redirect it into something else. I don't have to, get myself going. I'm just completely wrung out and burned out. Nope, not the case here. So, I to answer your question, I have purposely not premeditated or predetermined what it is I'm going to do when I'm done with 3492 South Ocean, because Tony, yes, it'll be done in a couple months, but it isn't done till it's sold. So I have to focus on the sales of it, and then I'll allow the brain space to consider what's next. But I'm not going into that phase with anything predetermined.
All right, that's great. That's great. We'll move on to a little bit of your running career and a little bit about the Caring House Foundation and what else you do. But since we've been talking about the business aspect of it, what if you were to give advice to someone young, someone fresh out of college, or even someone that barely graduated from high school and leaves home with $50 in their pocket, what's the best advice you would give to a young entrepreneur looking to get into the real estate business?
I mean, it really would be to anybody at any stage if you want to get into. I mean, it's really life advice. It doesn't matter real estate. You need to.
Sure.
I think the most important thing is I look back almost on a post-mortem of my career, and a post-mortem, not of my life because I'm not dead yet, but a post-mortem of my career would be like, I know people are smarter than me. They had more connections than me. They had better network than I did. They have better financing connections. They definitely had a higher education. But what I think I had and then embraced was how to handle fear. Again, if you think about it, okay, so the 3492 South Ocean is a $17.5 million house that I don't have a buyer for, and I'm almost done. I've got millions and millions of dollars into that. What if it doesn't sell? What if nobody likes the jellyfish sphere? What if they hate the countertops? And people can't imagine taking that kind of risk. So from an early stage, I exercised my risk tolerance, my risk muscle, if you will. I exercised my risk tolerance like a muscle. Eventually, your risk tolerance will become stronger and able to withstand greater pressure. So if you imagine going to a gym and you're kind of a weakling and you go in there and you start pumping doing curls with a 5-pound weight, and then next week you're at a 10-pound weight, and 6 months later you might be curling 30 pounds. Your risk tolerance is the same way. And the way I see risk, and just follow along this analogy, because most people, and Badwater is a great example, most people, when they think about taking a risk, really, if you dig deep on this one, because it's the thought of taking a risk that produces the fear. It's not the actual taking of the risk. So it's not everybody on the calls run Badwater and built $1 million houses and all the things, like Tony, that you've done to take risks. But you've all been on a roller coaster. When you get in that roller coaster and you bring the little safety bar down and you start click, 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 click up to the top of that first hill, your anxiety and fear factor is off the charts because it's the thought of what's going to come next. Well, once we start down the ride, what happens to that fear? It goes away. It's not there anymore. We have enjoyment, we have exhilaration, we have fun. I contend that it's the thought of taking a risk in life and the resulting fear that stops people from doing great things. We're wired as humans to, once we feel the sensation of fear, is to not pursue what we thought about taking the risk. And I contend that, so Frank McKinney is afraid every day of his life. I'm afraid that nobody will like that jellyfish. I'm afraid that nobody will like the countertops. I'm afraid I'll be dumpster diving if nobody likes my house. I'm afraid I'll DNF at Badwater again. But I don't let fear stop me. That's the difference. And if you go one step further, if you think about it, when you think about taking a risk in life is almost always associated with a big change or a big challenge. The change could be relational. It could be spiritual. It could be dietary. The big challenge could be physical, like Badwater. But risk is almost always associated with a big change in your life, the thought of a big change in your life, or the thought of a big challenge in your life. And so the result is always going to be something good if you take the risk. You might fail. Like, I've run 11 Badwaters. I've failed 4 times. I've made the finish line only 7 out of those 11 times. But the lessons that I've learned, and some of my real estate projects, Tony, they all didn't make the money that I thought they did. I mean, I got clobbered back when the market crashed in 2010. But when you're on that porch in your rocking chair with Jack Dennis or Art Webb or any of these older guys that have run Badwater 100 times, you'd rather, and you're going to have regrets. Wouldn't you rather regret what you did? Wouldn't you rather regret what you tried versus, man, I wish I would have tried that house. I wish I would have tried that race called Badwater, but I didn't, and now it's too late. So I'd rather regret what I did rather than what I didn't do. So if you're a young person or even a person looking for a change or a challenge in your life, don't let fear stop you. Embrace the sensation. Because Tony, when I'm afraid, I know I'm about ready to undertake a risk as a result of wanting a big change or a big challenge in my life.
Wow, that's well said. That's some good stuff. You got Ruel speechless over there.
That's good stuff. Absolutely.
That is great stuff. It's great because it applies to really everything. It doesn't have to be a real estate business. It could be anything.
No.
Anything you do in your life, and it's really that's really great stuff. Very, very profound words and super. I'm still floored by it.
That's the only thing that really set me apart. The only thing that set me apart. I mean, again, there's other people in that camp. Is that philosophical approach? And people oftentimes say, "Oh, Frank, you must never be afraid. You must have brass balls and blah blah blah." I'm like, no, I'm terrified. I mean, I'm afraid, but I don't let it stop me. And that has taught me that it's okay to take risks, and it's okay to take risks and fail. I'm not of the camp. I mean, the 1 year I DNF'd at Badwater. Matter of fact, last year I made 92 miles. I was the last person to pull out of all 33 people that DNF'd. I was the last one. And people will often tell me, hey, I couldn't make 9 miles, let alone 92 miles. At least you did that, and that must be some consolation. No, there was no consolation whatsoever. A failure is a failure. There's no trophy for just showing up. I trained my ass off. I didn't make it. So did I learn from it? Yes. Do I find consolation in it? Absolutely not.
Yeah, well,
you don't know that feeling because you never DNF'd at Badwater. You finished every one that you started.
Not yet, not yet. But I've DNF'd at plenty of things in the game of life, as we all have. But it's that saying that failure in life is inevitable, and that you can't go through life without failing at something, unless you, right? In the J.K. Rowling that said, unless you live your life so cautiously that you might as well that you failed by default, right? So, I mean, learning from failure is a huge thing. So what actually, I want to talk a little bit about Badwater and you, because Badwater is pretty much your event. Your daughter, Laura, and my daughters, Julie and Allison, both can probably say they might be the only children to actually have grown up out at Badwater on the Death Valley course. But I want to know more about how you got into ultra running and how you found it while you were in the midst of creating this real estate empire. But you were out there last year, and you said you were the last one to withdraw. You withdraw somewhere around Darwin or shortly thereafter. What happened? What happened in that last year in 2018 out there?
You know, it is good to do that post-mortem when you get done to see what happened. And sometimes, like in 2012, it was one thing. It was my heart. You know, I pulled out after 27 miles. I had an arrhythmia. I pointed to a single thing. Last year, it was one of those races where it was a confluence of likely a half a dozen things for me. And many of the other people that DNF, the first thing was it didn't get below 114 degrees and high humidity on that first night. I mean, it was brutal to start at 8. I was an 8 p.m. starter. You know, there's 9:30 and 11 o'clock. It was brutal you remember starting during the day at 6, it was okay. Then it gets super hot all the way through, the Panamint, the way into Stovepipe where it's the hottest section of the course. But, imagine that first night, you're already tired because you can't really rest during the day. You're supposed to rest, but who can rest? I liken it to, people say, don't you sleep before the race, Frank? Oh, I try, but imagine if you knew you were going to the gallows or before the firing squad at 8 o'clock. Like, good luck sleeping, because you know what you're about ready to embark on. It's going to be so brutal. That's what I feel like. I'm ready to put somebody's going to hang me with a noose, So it starts. It didn't get below, at least for us, it didn't get below 114. And Tony, the other thing, these new cutoff times. I'm not a fast runner. I mean, my average finish time over my 7 finishes is 44 hours and a minute. So I don't have a lot to spare. And my first finish, I was 14 years younger than I am now. So pushing to hit the cutoffs, the 50-mile cutoff, the 72-mile cutoff, and the 90-mile cutoff, you can't, at my pace, where I'm finishing at the back of the pack, typically with Marshall Ulrich as being the one who taught me this, start slow, Frank, and then slow down so you've got something for the second day. You can't do that anymore. You have to kind of push, especially that first cutoff at the 50. Actually, I think it's the 52-mile mark at the bathrooms on the way up Towns Pass. You got to be there 14 hours, and it's not, especially for folks that started at 9:30 and 11. They don't get 14 hours. They have to be there at 10 a.m. So everybody's pushing. And if you look at the DNS from last year, those were not all 8 p.m. starters. There were 3 past champions at DNF last year. So it was that in my knee, which I subsequently have had some pretty major knee surgery this year to fix it. In fact, I have had cadaver cartilage put into my knee because I just don't have any in my right knee in a spot. That was a problem. I had a little bit of a emotional drain with one of my crew members, which was unfortunate. It was more on me than them. So if you add all that stuff up, when I hit Darwin and I started heading out after Darwin, I was done. I mean, I was like a battery that had everything drained. I tried, everything I could to recharge that battery, and there was just no way I was going any further.
I mean, you've definitely had some experiences out on that race course. I think it was 2015. You had the heart issue.
14.
I think it was.
Oh no, 13.
Was it 14?
No, my heart was. So I, like you, Tony, I finished my first 6. Then I DNF'd 3 in a row, and then I made my next one, and then I DNF'd last year. So, I DNF'd really 4 out of the last 5 times I've tried. So there you go. There's my fear. Now, people associated with the race might see that, the decision makers of the race might see that as, Frank, you've DNF 4 out of the last 5 times. You got a 20% chance of making it. My response is I've finished 7 out of 11. So I like my chances. Like, I don't see 4 out of 5. I see I made 7 out of 11. I know what I did last year. I know what, I had my knee fixed. I know what I got to do differently. And I'm believing, because really the reason many of us go back, at least the reason I go back to Badwater, and this will be my 12th start. I go back because I'm seeking that elusive, perfect, emotional, and mental race. That's what I'm looking for. My time is, I could care less about my time. But, having, it doesn't mean I'm not going to have the lows, when I hit those low points, which we all do. How am I going to deal with them? How, because I've had them and I've had them defeat me before. Or if you back out the heart issue in 2012, and then I had some horrible, at the bottom, both my feet came off in 2013. I mean, literally they sloughed off at mile 90 something, and I was moving at less than a mile an hour, and there was no way I was going to make the cutoff. If you back out the physical issues, sometimes it's mental, it's emotional. And I really want to master that. And it's almost like a golfer seeking, a professional golfer going out and hoping they shoot 18. Well, we know it's impossible, but how close can we get? And I attribute that to how close can I get mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. Not physically, Tony, because physically I'm going to be a wreck. You're going to be a wreck. Everybody who runs that race, even if you are Pete Kostelnik and you finish it in 21 hours and 56 minutes, which is the record, he's a wreck. We're all a wreck. But how can you get through this thing emotionally, mentally? And that's why I keep going back. That and the spiritual experience I have, there's a reason that most of the most poignant scenes, most impactful scenes in the Bible were written in or about the desert. And right, Tony, I mean, spiritually, what takes place between you and your God, between you and your crew, is unlike anything else I've ever experienced in any other setting in my entire life.
Oh, absolutely. It's incredible. I mean, the mental aspect of it is, as Ray Zahab, as he says, he's got the 90-10, right? The ultra running is 90% mental, and the other 10% is all in your head. And certainly being out there is something else. I mean, you've gone through, I think it was 2015. You actually had a good time when you rolled in the Stovepipe Well, somewhere in like 9.5 hours, which is quite exceptional for the average person out at Death Valley. And I think that was the first nighttime start. And you had to withdraw. And correct me if I'm wrong, you actually retired from ultra running. You posted something in July of 2015 on Facebook that you officially retired from ultra running. Well, that retirement lasted about 360 days, if not less, because you had to train for the next Badwater, which you showed up for and finished. Talk a little bit about what happened then and why you went to the lengths to post to social media that you were retiring from ultra running, and then how did you bounce back and turn it around?
Here's a good life example that I hope everybody listens to. I'm going to use an acronym that we're all familiar with. You know what an all-terrain vehicle is, right? We all know what an all-terrain vehicle. What's the 3 letters that we refer to when we go out riding an all-terrain vehicle? ATV. We go ride an ATV. Authenticity, transparency, vulnerability. Focus on those things, because lately, in the last 5 years or so, almost since that time, Tony, I've tried to live my life more authentic, more transparent, more vulnerable. My marketing, when I market my properties, I'm more transparent now. I'm not some person on a pedestal who's a real estate god and guru. I mean, these are the things I screwed up. These are the things I messed up. These are the things you want to avoid. If you want to put me on a pedestal, that's fine, but I'll never put myself on a pedestal again. And in 2015, I was at an absolute low point in my life. My personal life was in shambles. Nilsa and I were maybe thinking about calling it quits. My family was falling apart. I happened to have been in one of the best shape I was in my life. But that was an escape from a personal life that was in shambles. I had no business being out there at Badwater. Not because I wasn't physically ready, because Tony, if the mind isn't ready, doesn't matter how fit I was. I was like, I mean, you know me, I'm 6'1". I'm usually a 185 pound runner because of my size or my height. I was like 168, 170. I was flying. I mean, I was running 10Ks in like 40 minutes and I was still 50 years old. So I had a major meltdown, emotional. I remember throwing my water bottle into the desert right before I got to Stovepipe. People, I was yelling at my wife. I was yelling at my crew. I was cursing. I was in a hotel room, you know, sulking. And I was just at a low point. I should have pulled out. I should have never gone there. I should have worked on my personal life at the time. But, you know, I thought Badwater would fix it. It didn't. And I embarked on a path that would set my life right, you know, that would correct some of the things that were wrong in my life, my behavior that was wrong. And in 2016, I thought the best way was one of the ways to help that was to come back with a better mindset and a corrected mindset and a healed mindset. And I did. And, you know, that was after 3 DNFs in a row. I ended up having a really good race. I mean, not the perfect one. I think I finished in like 44 hours or something, 45 hours. And I was, it was a nice redemption for me. So, you know, backing up a bit, you know, living a little bit more authentic and transparent and vulnerable. I needed to reach out for help. I was too proud to reach out for help. We were, you know, financially, we were struggling a little bit. We were just, you know, barely surviving after the crash of 2011, just trying to rebuild. And, you know, Badwater being the metaphor for life, right? I mean, it's really life in 2 days. I used it, and Chris was kind enough, Chris Cosman, the director, race director, was kind enough to allow me back in. And I did meet the minimum criteria. You know, I had the prerequisite other race on my resume. And thank God, you know, because I have had as my screensaver, I work mostly from my phone, but when I'm in front of my big screen, when I write and design, I write my books, I have that photo of me finishing in 2016. I haven't changed it in 3 years, you know, like, because I just know what that felt like to cross that finish line again.
Did you have Nilsa with you on your crew again that year in 2016? That was the first year that I wasn't out there. So I was there I ran 2009 to 2015, those 7 years. Was she with you in 2016?
Yeah. I would never go without her. I would never have her on my crew I would never be on a crew without her on, unless she said no, you know, and if she said she didn't want to go, then I'd probably have to rethink going because, you know, this is a little bit of trivia, but, you know, when we go to the pre-race meeting, Tony, if you finish Badwater once, stand up. Everybody, you know, the finishers who have finished, stand up. If you finish twice, stay standing up. And you keep going, like you and me, you finish 7 times, stay standing up. There's you look around, there's not many people. I mean, there might be 10 other people standing up. And they get to, of course, Marshall. Marshall's finished 20 times and nobody else is standing. Then they do, if you've crewed once, stand up. Nilsa has crewed. She crewed Lisa Smith one year with 1 year when I wasn't there. I was writing one of my books. Nilsa's crewed. She is tied with David Jones's wife as crewing that race more than anybody else. She has crewed that race. Right. This will be 13 for her, and 12 of them will have been for me, one with Lisa Smith, Batchin. So, yeah, I mean, she is the crew chief, and she needs to be there.
Were you worried for that, given that you had DNF the 3 years before 2016, and given that the medical issues that you had during that time, and then the emotional issues that you had in 2015, I know you're worried every time you go out there. I know you have a fear every time, because I'm out there when I'm out there too, and you're at that starting line. It used to be up on the road, now it's down below, and I'm always literally freaking out. Did you have an extra layer of fear given your prior 3 attempts at Badwater and the medical issues that you had?
I didn't really until just past Father Crawley, which is the 80-mile mark, more or less. I was really okay. I mean, but I'll tell you, that nighttime start, Tony, for you, when you go back there, that's going to be the thing you don't like the most. You can handle the heat. You can handle the distance.
It's a killer. I did it the first year they had it.
Oh, you did?
Okay. Nighttime start. Oh, yeah. Okay. And I remember talking to Marshall at the starting line, and I was like, man, I'm really worried about the nighttime start. He's like, well, everybody should be, because that's the worst part of this whole thing. And,
it is, and for somebody, well, you, what was your finish time that year in 15.
What year was that?
15.
It was
That was the first
2015, right? So that was the last time that I ran Badwater, and I was 38-39.
Okay. So that's still, I mean, it's fast. It's faster than I would be, but still you're awake for almost 60 hours because you don't really sleep the night before the race. Yeah. Right? I mean, the race starts at 8, but are you sleeping that day? You might get an hour here or there, but you're not sleeping, man. And the night before
I couldn't sleep. No, I couldn't sleep. I tried. I did try. I couldn't. There were people coming in and out of the room, and I think I had Vinny Tortorich, who was out there crewing me with a whole bunch of great people, and we were having a great time. I couldn't sleep during the day. No way.
No. So yeah, I was okay. I mean, until, and it happened to me again last year when I got to that Father Crowley, because it's starting to get dark again. Like you've already gone through, you've gone up the hills, you've gone up Pounds Pass, you've gone through the heat, because the heat really hits you now in the Panamint Valley. At least at my pace, it hits in the Panamint Valley, because that sun's setting over Father Crowley as you're going west. That's brutal. And so in that year, in 2000, in the last year I finished in 2016, I started having doubts after Crowley, and I started weeping. I wanted all my other crew members off the course. I wanted Nilsa out there. I was sobbing like the kid who, just sobbing, crying that I'm gonna DNF again. I'm gonna DNF again. I kept saying that, but something in my mind, and I've never been able to quite articulate this. There's times, Tony, right when you're out there, when you feel like you're gonna quit, when you feel like you have to quit, that you're gonna, you're in a bad place. I remember the year I gave you that the one armband, the arm sleeve, and you were struggling.
Still have it.
Yep. And I'm like, you needed something. There's times, but of all the times I've finished, I never truly crossed over in my mind to believing I was going to quit. I might have thought I needed to, or I was gonna, but believing, I didn't do that in 16. Even though I'm sobbing, and it was right past the 100-mile mark. So there's a great picture, the full moon in the background. Nelson and I are running together. It's everywhere. So it's a beautiful picture, and I didn't cross over, Tony. I mean, I might have been crying, but I didn't cross over. And once I didn't, and I was having a little bit of a heart issue. My blood was really thick, and when I got to, I didn't know I was going to finish until I got to that, it very well, that last turn, when you see the big pine tree and you see that finish tape. I didn't know until that last turn, man, if I was going to make it.
Yeah, it's quite an experience, and I'm sure you found the same. And the 7 times I've been out there, and even the 1 time crewing before that, each experience is completely different. I've never looked back and said, it's this again. It's always been different, with different highs, different lows, and different locations, and it's been. I mean, I can't wait to get back out there at some point. Hopefully, when I send both kids off to college, but it would be nice to get. Maybe I'll find my way out there to help somebody out this year. But speaking of that crew, right? So you always have Nilsa on your crew, and I know you had Laura out there. But for the rest of your crew, am I remembering right? You used to have somebody new every year on your crew to give them an opportunity. Someone, right? So somebody that's never been out there before, has never experienced the event. So you pick. How do you choose that person? And is there, do you put it out there for everybody with an opportunity? Or do you have somebody in mind every year that you ask? How does that work?
I don't have someone in mind, but so for those of you listening to this podcast primarily for the ultra running part and care less about books or real estate or anything else, the crew that you put together for a race like Badwater, there's no mile 5, let alone mile 135 without the right crew. You will not see the finish line no matter what kind of badass you are. That crew thinks for you, thinks for me after about the first 24 hours. And I might only be at mile, 80 after 24 hours. They got another 55 to go with me. So what I found, Tony, and this is, first of all, when in selecting your crew, you need to be 100% selfish. You need to make sure that crew member is there to serve you, not to train for their next race, not to show how far they can go with you and disregard the orders of the crew chief. And I'm really sensitive to finding someone who I know is going to serve me and my needs out there only and not their own. And so every year, of course, Nilsa's on the crew, and I do have returning crew members that are good. But the reason I include someone who's never been there, and this is purely selfish, Tony, is because I know every cactus, every embedded rock in the asphalt. I know every turn. I know every smell. I have a photographic memory. I have that whole course embedded into my mind. Familiarity breeds complacency. And when you hit a low point early, let's say I could hit a low point at mile 50, and I know I've got 85 miles of hell to go, and I know every turn and rock and cactus ahead of me in those 85 miles. I've not only ran that race a bunch of times, but I've trained out there. Those fresh set of eyes allow me to see the race through those eyes again for the first time. The wonderment, the awe that I see on the face of a new crew member helps get me through, because it's so wonderful and so fresh, and they're so alive. If it was just the same crew and the same people, I wouldn't make it. I mean, we'd all just say, "Oh shit, Frank feels this bad, and we got all these miles, and we haven't been to Father Crawley yet. We haven't gone down to Keeler, where the flies are as big as airplanes." And no, this new crew member knows nothing about that, and that's why I kind of live much of the race through their eyes for the first time.
Contrast that with having your daughter out there, Laura, who's been out there with you since she was 6. She's now grown up, a junior in college, going to graduate from Penn State in a year and a half. Like you, I've had both of my kids out there for many, many years. And talk about the difference between having somebody who's living it for the first time and you living it through their eyes versus having your family out there. Because I've always found that having family out there can be a double-edged sword, right? Because there are times during that event in particular, and this goes because my kids and my wife have also crewed for me at other 100-mile races and events. I've wavered between it's great to have them out there because it reminds me of who I am and what I have and how grateful I can be. And they're a great pickup, and to see your 11-year-old or 12-year-old or 13-year-old running with you down the white line on your way to Lone Pine. But at the same time, I find this nervousness about, what about the bad times during that race? They're going to see me at my very, very worst. They're going to see me pass out on the side of the road heading up to the finish line. They're going to see me cranky, whiny, miserable, crying. Distinguish that, but talk about the difference between those two and what it meant to have and what it means to have Nilsa and Laura out there with you when you're doing things like this.
I think, Tony, since our daughters are close to the same age, the answer to this is different for the wife versus your kids versus your daughters.
Give me both.
My wife is prepared and it has a drill sergeant's mentality to make sure I see that finish line. She does not want to live with me for 364 days when I DNF. It's not fun. So she has some self-preservation in mind. And she knows, when you raise your kids, you don't let them see all your ATV, your authenticity, your transparency, especially your vulnerability. Your dad, you got to be the rock. Your kid doesn't get to see you at the low point like they get to see you at Badwater. It's pretty rare. And so Nilsa has seen it all, is not intimidated by any of my, my crankiness or my crying or the highs. I mean, sometimes the highs are, so high that they're unrealistic out there. She's ready and prepared for that. Now, my daughter, the reason Laura's been there for so many years, and by the way, I don't know she'll ever be back because it's time for her to do her thing. Badwater's daddy's thing. She's off and doing her own thing. I would love to have her come, be on my crew again, but I can tell she wants to do her own thing. My daughter's birthday is July 13th. The race has fallen on or right near her birthday since she was 6, since my first race in 2005. So her celebrating, if you put the little air quotes around the word celebrating, her birthday at Keeler Keeler is a little tiny town where the flies are as big as, like birds. It was kind of neat when she was young, but as a teenager, as she got a little older, do I really want to be in the middle of nowhere when all my friends are on the beach in Florida? No, she didn't. But she was there to support her daddy. Now, when she was old enough to be an official crew member, not just like a cheering squad person, which she used to catch up with us, somewhere around Lone Pine. I put her on the crew a couple of years, and it was really hard, especially in 16 when I did finish, for her to see her daddy suffering for a full 44 hours like she saw. And after I got up from Panama, from Father Crawley at mile 80, I took a little break, and I was at a pretty low point before I hit Father Crawley at mile 80 that I actually decided I was going to sleep for an hour, which I've never been able to do during the race, but I'm going to do it. And I tell people that imagine a 6-shooter, a gun that can hold 6 bullets. And during Badwater, you're going to need to shoot that gun a couple of times in desperation. Like each bullet represents something desperate that you need to do. Like, I'm so tired, I'm going to need to drink 3 Red Bulls to just wake up, which I normally wouldn't do, but I got to shoot the bullet. Well, when I was at mile 80 at Father Crawley, I had to sleep. That sleep deprivation was killing me. So I took a melatonin. During the middle of the race, I took a melatonin. And I'll be able to sleep for an hour and get up. Well, not only did I not be able to sleep because I kept hearing people passing, and I'm like, I'm going to say a bad word. What the fuck am I laying down for? I mean, everybody else is going. I got pissed. I put my shoes back on. I started going, and Laura crewed me from Crawley to like the mile, 85 mark. Well, guess what? The melatonin kicked in. With your sleep deprived and you're moving, and the melatonin kicked in, Tony, I was still moving, but I don't remember from like mile 82 to well past mile 90 checkpoint. I completely have no memory of it because and Laura was out there for a lot of that. Tony, the cactuses started turning into the gargoyles from Ghostbusters. Remember those where they come alive off the building and they would jump down? Well, the cactuses started attacking my daughter. And I'm jumping on my daughter, the gargoyles were attacking my daughter, and I'm jumping on her, saving her from the gargoyles. It was pure hallucination. But imagine the terror in my daughter that her daddy is freaking losing his mind. The cactuses have turned into gargoyles, and they're jumping across the road trying to attack and kill my daughter. I think that forever scarred her to where she got back in the van and really didn't come back out until the finish line.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Well, like you said, our daughter kind of grew up together out there, and it's been fun watching Laura grow up to become this driving force over at Penn State. And you're lucky. You've got a great kid, and I think it's a product of great parents, which is fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Talk to me a little bit about so you are, to me, a tremendous giver. You and Nilsa founded the Caring House Project Foundation, and that's a foundation that provides self-sufficient villages. I think you're up to like 27 plus self-sufficient villages that you've created for homeless families in the Caribbean, South America, Africa, Indonesia, and even in the United States. And I think I remember, didn't you did a couple things that really strike me, and this is before I ask you to tell everybody a little bit more about the Caring House Project Foundation. You did 2 things that I remember, I think, I'm pretty sure it was you, that are incredible. I think one year at Badwater, you personally provided a donation, and it was in everybody's, goodie bag when you got there, a donation to each person's charity that they had made known to Chris Kosman was their charity they were raising money for. And the second thing, I think if I remember right, you documented and lived homeless for a period of time. You traveled the United States and spent some time with the homeless living under bridges and such. Did I get that? Is that right? Is that both of those are you?
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So Tell us a little bit about that experience, the living the homeless lifestyle for a little bit, and then more about the Caring House Foundation, Project Foundation, and what you do there, how you started it, why you and Milford decided this particular charitable foundation was the one that you guys wanted to go and grow.
Well, you asked a little while ago about what advice I could give to a young entrepreneur, a young business person, and you talked about risk. The second piece of advice I can tell you is, and it comes from the passage in the Gospel of Luke in the Bible, chapter 12, verse 48. I'm going to paraphrase it. You probably heard it. To whom much is entrusted, much is expected. And each one of us has been blessed with the ability to succeed at some level, Tony, but those blessings were never meant for our sole benefit. They were meant to assist others who will likely not or never succeed at the level you, I, or Ruel have. That's what God put us on the earth to do. Not to build beautiful mansions or run races. It's to take the blessings he's given us, find talent and treasure, and share with those less fortunate. And so before I had any money, I shared my time. Before I had any money, I shared my talent. And when I had a little money, we combine all three, time, talent, and treasure, and we share them with the world's most desperately poor and homeless in the country of Haiti. It's the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere after the earthquake in 2010. For a 2-year period, it was the poorest country in the world. Now it's like the third or fourth poorest, behind a couple of African nations. But we build self-sufficient villages in Haiti. We build, as you are absolutely correct, our 27th village we're building now in our 22nd Haitian city in our 16th year of building in Haiti. We provided shelter and a self-sustaining existence to 12,000 children and their families in those 16 years. And I don't believe, I can tell you firsthand and foremost that charity exacerbates poverty. It is not the solution. I believe in self-sufficiency. I believe in creating villages that are self-reliant. And so I don't want to have a welfare system created in a country that doesn't have one. The system's fine for those who are more liberal. The system's fine, guys. I'm not indicting the system, but I will indict the mentality. An entitlement mentality is toxic. It's cancer. And so when we go to a place like Haiti, this poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, we build villages that are entirely self-sufficient. Housing, renewable food, clean drinking water, a community center that has a church and a school and a clinic in it, and some form of free enterprise that we leave behind so that village can be self-sufficient. Because that's why I refer to myself as a philanthro-capitalist. Yes, I believe in philanthropy. It's a wonderful thing, but I also believe capitalism is the solution to poverty. So when we create a self-sufficient village in Haiti, it has to have that capitalistic element, or else I don't get involved. Well, I mean, that's that simple. I go back to that first village we built 16 years ago. It's still thriving. Why? Because of the capitalism that was sprinkled over the top of that village and all 26 villages since then that allows them to sustain themselves. So when I go build a big house, 3492 South Ocean, when I build that house, Tony, I have in the forefront of my mind, the knowledge and the anticipation that when that house sells, there'll be more villages in Haiti. I had a 1.8 GPA. I'm a simpleton. I'm a linear thinker. If you want to dumb it down to its lowest level, I build the big ones so I can build a lot of the little ones. That's simple. And I'm in the housing business. I provide housing to the world's most wealthy who really don't even need another house. They don't need it at all. This is a desire-driven purchase. The people that we're providing these self-sufficient villages for in Haiti, they're living in mud shacks with palm fronds for a roof. These are 200, 300 square foot mud shacks. Sometimes they're put together with cardboard or just discarded tin. And they have rodents the size of cats. So rats the size of cats running across the floors, nibbling at the children's feet, toes at night. I've seen children without toes because rats have eaten their toes off. And imagine your daughters when they were 5 and 6 years old eating mud patties flavored with bouillon and lemon juice. So if you see over there, they look like little hamburgers, but really the children are eating dirt, flavored freaking dirt. So, I've written 6 books in 5 different genres. And if you can't donate to build one house, which Tony, I know you've donated a lot to our charity, I can build a concrete house in Haiti for $4,200. I'm going to repeat that. A brand new concrete home for a family of 8 for $4,200. They're not big, they're not fancy, but it's sturdy. They survived the hurricanes and all the earthquakes over there. But when I sell a book, a simple book, like my new book, The Other Thief, that just came out a few months ago, $20 provides 200 meals in our community center for children who are eating the mud patties. We're not providing them mud patties, we're providing them 2-part protein, usually rice and beans, 1 part carbohydrate for their meals. So as you go through life, you, especially people listening to this, we all got to make a living. We have to put food on the table, and we have to, and that's great. And you look to discover what I refer to as your professional highest calling, which I define as something you do for a living a little bit better than most. Not better than everybody. Like Tony's a little bit better than most at being a lawyer. He's not the best lawyer, just like I'm a little bit better than most at building high-end homes. I'm not the best. But God gave me the gift and Tony the gift of being a little bit better than most of what we do. Therefore, we've discovered our professional highest calling. I found mine early, and I've been good at it for 30 years. But what was my spiritual highest calling? I realized I didn't have one. I didn't know what it meant until in the late 90s. I realized I needed to find it. I needed to discover something more to life than just building oceanfront mansions, because I was pretty depressed actually at the time. I discovered that I had this knack for creating these villages. Actually, I started domestically by providing elderly homeless people with shelter here in the United States. And then we took our mission over to Haiti in 2003. So that one thing, imploring your podcast listener to dovetail their professional highest calling with their spiritual highest calling. Tony, being a lawyer, could simply offer pro bono legal advice to people in New York that can't afford it. And he makes a little time every month. It could be 2 hours a month that he's going to donate to somebody who can't afford to pay his hourly rate. He's a great lawyer. He's got that professional highest calling. Well, let's go to legal aid. Let's go provide some time to legal aid. Your gift of that, being a good lawyer. That, Tony, when I found that in the late 90s, so 20 years ago, we started Caring House. It allowed me to stay passionate about my professional highest calling because I had a cause and a purpose greater than just building a beautiful house with a jellyfish sphere and 11,000-year-old countertops. My purpose really, listen, the houses I build for a living, even 3492 South Ocean, will be rubble in 25 years. Not because I built it terribly, it's because the land will be so expensive that somebody will tear it down and build a new house there. My legacy will not be building beautiful oceanfront homes. My legacy will be building these self-sufficient villages in Haiti and caring for God's children who are eating mud patties. I mean, that's the legacy I hope I'm remembered for, I should say. I don't know what I'll be remembered for. Maybe I won't even be remembered at all. But at least my family will remember that my dad or my granddad, man, what he did in Haiti was really cool. And that's what I hope everybody finds, is that spiritual highest calling.
The sales of your books, the proceeds all go to the Caring House Foundation, right?
All of them. Yep, 100%.
That's great. That's great. I mean, you've written 6, starting with your maverick approach to real estate success, and then to your latest one. But when you wrote the book, The Tap, and you released that, and that's when you went on your Survival to Thrival tour, and it's more than even I made it out to be. It wasn't that you were just stopping at homeless shelters and soup kitchens, and it wasn't that you were yourself living homeless for a period of time. You spent 24 days, and you actually hosted what you called these life exchanging home swaps, where you would go sleep under a bridge or at a shelter, while you would take a homeless family and allow them to stay in your hotel or in your tour bus that you had brought around with you. What was that like? What was the experience? Not only you living under a bridge or at a homeless shelter, but what was it like to see the homeless people that you were touching, their gratitude and what it was like for them to experience meeting you and having the opportunity to stay in a hotel or on the bus for a period of time?
Yeah, so I remember seeing you in New York when that was one of our tour stops.
That's right.
And
that's right.
You came out to the soup kitchen with people from your office. I remember clearly. And that was a very hostile crowd that day. That was actually one of the most hostile crowds I was in front of. And even this time, Tony, when I did the Other Thief tour, I did replicate a lot of what we did on the TAP tour. And I can get into the differences in a second. But to answer your direct question about the TAP tour, the TAP was, again, based on that passage from the Gospel of Luke, to whom much is entrusted, much is expected. And rather than just do bookstores and media appearances for the book, we decided to go to homeless shelters and, soup kitchens and stuff and deliver that message, to whom much is entrusted, much is expected. And we also delivered donations at each one of the homeless shelters that we stopped at, because a lot of those places were on a shoestring budget. And if you're homeless and your homeless shelter closes, which they do from time to time, where do you turn? I mean, you've already lost everything. The last thing you want to lose is hope when you're out there on the street. And so helping these shelters maintain hope for the people who come to get the hot meal and the clothes from them was our mission. But more for the people who were observing the tour from a media perspective or from, social media, which wasn't as big back then. But I wanted to show, and again, this was just after the big crash, how close so many people are. They're one paycheck away from being homeless, and how close so many people are one paycheck away from not being homeless, from getting off the street. And so we swapped places in I think it was like 20 some cities. No, it was 16 cities. It was 16 cities where I would take somebody, that was in one of the shelters and put them in the hotel or in the tour bus, as you said. And I would sleep in the park or under the bench or under the bridge or in the homeless shelter for a night. And listen, if I can do battle, or I can sleep in a homeless shelter, anybody can do anything for one night if you know it's going to be over the next day. And yet, that giving that person that sense of dignity and that sense of hope by swapping places, we had one rule. The rule was, yes, you can order room service, you can go, you get your new set of clothes, but don't stay in your room. I want you to put that new set of clothes on and get out, walk around the hotel, walk around the streets, and feel what it feels like to be respected and to feel good about yourself, to have that self-esteem return. And I mean, it's still on my website. I think some of those videos that were covered by the media, how that swap, how impactful it was for those folks. And also, when we would film me underneath a bridge, and what okay, I can do it for one night, but some people were living under bridges for years, man. Like, God, imagine how hard that would be. And how grateful you should be if you're watching this video. If you're complaining that your boss is mean, well, at least you got a job and you got a roof over your head. So quit freaking complaining. These other folks, listen, Tony, between that tour, what we've done domestically for homelessness, and the most recent tour for the Other Thief, I've probably shook hands with 10,000 homeless people in my life. And of those 10,000 homeless people, 7,500 are lucid, are well-spoken, are educated, are not just out there talking to the lamppost because they've lost their mind. Many of them, yes, they have drug and alcohol problems, but it didn't cause the homelessness. They became homeless because of a bad, unfortunate event in their life. And then because they were so, in deep despair and depressed, they turned to the drugs and alcohol on the street. And that's not all of them, but that's a lot of them. And especially the lucid nature with which my conversations were with most of these homeless people. So on the Other Thief tour, we took it to another level where I did homeless shelters, soup kitchens, juvenile detention centers, veterans facilities, abused women's facilities. Where else did I go? There's a few other places that needed to hear the message. That book is all about grace, mercy, love, forgiveness, and redemption. And I took that message to people who really needed to hear that God loved them. There was mercy and there was grace and there was forgiveness and there was redemption out there available to them. And it was the closest I ever came to kind of acting like almost like a preacher or a priest, delivering, because the book is a Christian romance novel. And we didn't do the swap in this one, but we went to more facilities. It was we did 35 venues in like 27 days. Of those 35 venues, 25 were homeless shelters, soup kitchens, food pantries, juvenile detention center, all those places I mentioned. And just to deliver that message. And Tony, what I've learned, when the guy puts his hand out for, hey man, you got any money? the first thing I do, I still do it to this day in Delray Beach. I ask their name. What's your name? Tell me about where you're from. Tell me a little bit about your story. And people, the homeless folks, most of them, if they're not, barking at the lamppost and have lost their mind, most of them want to be recognized, want to be acknowledged, want to be appreciated, and just sit and spend 5 minutes asking them those questions. No matter how bad they smell or how few teeth they have, talk to them. And in the end, if you feel like giving them $1 or a gift card or whatever, do it. But that feeling of just wanting to be acknowledged is what I have found in shaking those 10,000 hands of what most homeless people want to feel.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. I mean, I remember being in New York, and I think I was there with one or two people, one from my office, and then one runner that was a running partner of mine, and we helped pass things out and volunteer, and it was a lot of fun. I remember it was a little bit heated, and it was pretty big. There was a lot of people there who had shown up to that. It was at the soup kitchen, if I remember right, and it was around lunchtime. So, but that was a great thing to watch, though. That was truly fantastic.
Yeah, you came to the one that of all these stops, that one, I still talk about it with the guy who was with me, Juan. I think you remember meeting Juan. He did the other thief tour just a few months ago with me. We were fearful for our well-being at that one. It was that, the mood. I've never lost a room like I lost that room. And just couldn't, I couldn't relate. We were in DC this time around, and we did a presentation in front of over 200 homeless people. I think there's 210. Of the 210, I think 190 were black. I'm a white guy up there, and I connected, in every place. But that day, I think it was what was the name of that church? Oh, I'd have to look it up. But man, I don't know about you, but I was a little fearful that day. It was the only time.
Yeah, well, I was living in New York and Brooklyn, so maybe I was a little bit used to it. But no, it was quite an experience, and I think if I remember right too, there's you had a lot of giveaways there too, and I think part of that, there was all sorts of reasons why it got a little hectic there. But I just remember folks getting things, and folks that didn't get anything were not happy that they didn't get anything, and it became a little bit crazy. I do remember that, but it was a great tour and a great thing you did, and it shows that you hit all those levels of grace, mercy, love, forgiveness, and redemption, right? And you not only live them, but you look for them in others, which is kind of really it's really cool. So that's great. Now tell me about the books, right? So 6 books, 5 different genres, you said, and I think you have a children's book in there, something about the lunchbox. I forgot.
Yeah,
what it's not
that was your daughter's favorite book, right? You loved that book.
It was. She loved that book. She read it. Julia, my oldest. Just quickly, how'd you get real estate developer, Caring House Foundation, speaker, and now an author. How'd you get into writing books? What made you do that? And obviously, with the proceeds going to the Caring House Foundation, it goes in hand with that, of course, which is great. But not everybody, I know a lot of people that want to be authors and write books, and not everybody's good at doing that. You're an international bestseller. How did you decide to write books, and what's your process like?
Yeah, so first, the 6 books, or the 5 genres. The first book was called Make It Big. It's a philosophical book. Came out in 2002, so man, 17 years old. Still the one that has sold the most copies, with Wiley as my publisher. Wiley said, it's great you fancy yourself a philosopher, but you're really a real estate guy. So, give us a real estate book. So my second book was Frank McKinney's Maverick Approach to Real Estate Success, which was right about the 20-year mark of my real estate career. That came out. Then I wrote The Tap, which was going into the spirituality genre. So philosophy, real estate, spirituality. The Tap did extremely well. That was the one that did the tour at the homeless shelters. Then I wrote another real estate book called Burst This, Frank McKinney's Bubble-Proof Real Estate Strategies. Really, it encompasses all I knew at the time. I can say I don't know much more since then. It's my most recent real estate book. right after the crash, and how to bubble-proof your real estate portfolio, be it buy and hold or buy and sell. And then the fifth book was a young reader fantasy novel called Dead Fred, Flying Lunchboxes, and the Good Luck Circle that competed with Harry Potter, Twilight, Narnia, Hunger Games. Deeply fantastical book that with all the action scenes set right here in South Florida, which was different than all those other books. That did really well. And then I didn't write a book for about 8 years until The Other Thief came out late in 2018. And that book is based on the Gospel of Luke, chapter 23, verse 33 through 43, which is the scene where Christ is crucified. And he offers the most beautiful showing of love, really, to me in the entire Bible. That grace and that mercy and that love and that forgiveness and that redemption to the other thief on the cross. When the other thief turns to Christ and says, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Christ turns to this perfect stranger who's hanging next to him and says, "I assure you, today you will be with me in paradise," which is translated that says, "I forgive you," or "You're forgiven." And he dies knowing he's forgiven. It's just a beautiful thing, and I wrote the whole book based upon that thing. But it's a Christian romance novel. So what I tell people that want to write a book, now, first of all, in school, as we were growing up, we're taught to read, and that's great. Read, continue to read. I read. I love reading, but we weren't really taught to write. We might have had to write in English and, penmanship or creative writing classes. But I think writing should be pushed as much as reading is pushed, because reading is reactive. The brain, yes, it reacts to what it's reading, but it also, it engages creativity and all that. But writing is purely 100% proactive. There's no reaction whatsoever. So in writing these different genres, and I'll tell you, when I was writing that young reader fantasy novel, Dead Fred, I mean, what it produced in my business and my real estate creations was extremely creative, because I was tapping into that creative side. So if everybody listening to this podcast, you have a book in you. Listen, I started writing The Other Thief on May 1st, 2017. It came out in October of 2018. That's 14 months. It's got 200 and some pages, 260 pages. That's less than a page a day if you do the math. I mean, can you write a couple paragraphs today and a couple paragraphs tomorrow, or skip the next day and then write a whole page? Yes, you can. And your story, whatever your story is, will be interesting to your family at worst. At best, maybe the whole world will be interested in it. And with print on demand today, you don't have to have a publisher. You can go to Amazon, and Amazon will print you 5 books. Print on demand. You don't have to, in my early days, I had to buy 5,000 copies in advance. I had to have a publisher, and it's hard. Today, Google Amazon print on demand, and you can have Amazon print your book for you. So I implore you to write your story. And it's going to take too long. It won't take, Tony, I mean, you're an ultramarathon runner. You don't start by training 100 miles at a time. You start by training 1 mile. So write a page, write a paragraph, and eventually your story will be told.
That's great. Yeah, maybe I got one in me. It must be like an ultra event where you just have to plug through it and take your time and go through it. This has been great, Frank. It's been great. We're talking for like over an hour and a half, which is wonderful. I don't want to take up more of your time. Might have to have you back on again to talk more about your running and your training and stuff like that, and what you eat and drink and all that kind of stuff. This has been really fun, because our last 2 guests we talked primarily about running with, and to get into a lot of your background and the Philanthro-Capitalist part of you, the author part of you, and the real estate part of you has been great. I did want to bring up one thing before we wrap up is, so we were talking right before we got on the podcast, right? You are the proud owner of a flamethrower, right? And this is really interesting to me, because you mentioned a little bit before, but I want you to share, how on earth does that process work? I mean, do you just go walk into one of those like one-stop shops, like Myers or one of those like super fancy Walmarts, and you grab a carton of milk over here, a head of lettuce, and then you go browse the gun and flamethrower aisle? Like, how does that work? Please tell us.
So you first of all, I feel most alive when I experience extremes for the first time. And I think everybody listening to this does, right? This is primarily an ultra running community. Don't you all feel alive when you experience your first, 50K, then your first 50 mile or first 100 mile? When I first experienced my first bad water, did I ever feel alive? And I still feel alive. Experience a freaking flamethrower. You will feel as alive as it comes because you feel so. I'm not into guns. Like, I am not a gun person. I don't own a gun. Honestly, I'm afraid of putting a gun in my hand because I'll go, I'll shoot a hole in Nelson's car because it's fun. I just am not meant to carry a weapon. But I wanted to use, in the grand unveiling of my final masterpiece, 3492 South Ocean, there's going to be a pretty significant pyrotechnics show and a Hollywood stunt show as part of the unveiling. So I hope if you're listening to this and there's still tickets available, I hope you'll consider coming down and experiencing the grand unveiling and then touring this final masterpiece of mine. We use it as a fundraiser. We ask people to donate $200 per person to come. I'm limited to 190 people at the unveiling because of the fire marshal. That's all I can fit in the house. If I'm able to get everybody to donate $200, it's 10 more houses in Haiti that I can build. So it's a small ask of people who want to come and experience this unveiling. So to help promote it, seeing there's going to be pyrotechnics, I thought, well, I could light fireworks off. A flamethrower. I mean, that's the ultimate pyrotechnic device. So I Googled and I'm looking around. They're not easy to find. I find one in this kind of seedy neighborhood down in Miami. I drive all the way down there. I've never been in a gun store in my life. Okay, so it's a different crowd, man. I walk in, and you got to go through the security doors and all this other stuff. So I'm in there, and I'm here for the flamethrower. So they take me. There's one left. I've got the last one. They're showing me how to use. I thought they were going to do a demo in the parking lot because the lady on the phone told me they would. Well, they didn't. They couldn't. They wouldn't. Like, well, how the hell am I supposed to learn how to do this? Watch this video, they tell me. So I'm watching the video. I'm like, okay, I think I can figure this out. So I'm going to get it. I'm thinking, is there a 3-day cooling off period? What's the gun laws here? I want this thing now. Like, I'm not going to cool off. I want it. And they said, no, with a gun there is, but with this, you have to sign this release. I'm ready to sign anything. I just want to walk out of there with the thing. And I'm reading it because I do read, as Tony would advise me as my lawyer, like, read your stuff, Frank. So I read the 2-page release. And basically it was a release where I had to attest to my own sanity. I'm signing a release to the gun store owner, to the gun store itself, that I am of sound mind. Yet you're releasing a flamethrower to me. You don't know me. I could be escaped from the mental institution, but as long as I put my name under the bottom line saying I am sane and I attest to my own sanity, I'm able to walk out of a gun store with a flamethrower. I was laughing under my breath. I mean, I'm here, and I walked out. I went home. I followed the instructions. I put it together. And if you go to, by the way, if you're on Instagram, it's just the Frank McKinney on Instagram, because I'm using Instagram a little bit more than I'm using Facebook. But if you're on Facebook, it's just look up Frank McKinney, and you'll see the video where I announced the grand unveiling, and I'm going to do it again this weekend, where I announce the actual date of the grand unveiling, and I get to shoot this flamethrower. Tony, it shoots a flame 30 feet long.
I'm watching it. That's a video with you in the red chair with the two very attractive ladies to your right and left. Yeah. And you're sitting in the chair, and you got a flamethrower. This is hysterical. Well, listen, at least we know that with your own self-serving mental health statement that you can get a flamethrower in this country right at the store. I mean, what happens when you get pulled over and a police officer pulls up and asks you, do you have any weapons or drugs in the vehicle? Do you say, no, sir, I don't. Do you have a flamethrower?
I have a flamethrower. Yeah, I mean, believe me, all those thoughts were going through my head. What if I get pulled over? Especially once I put it together, and the canister that it shoots gasoline. I mean, it's not some fancy. It's not like some. It's gasoline. So yeah, I mean, and to show how like I lied on that affidavit. What you're watching on social media is me in that red chair with the models talking about it. Tony, I'm on the roof of my own house that I'm building for $17.5 million, shooting the flamethrower with gas, when it hits the ground, it doesn't go out right away. So the roof of my house is burning. Now, I had tested it at home. I realized it burns out pretty quick. But my project manager, who, bless his soul, he's very passionate. Like, he's taken ownership of this project. It's kind of his project. I didn't tell my GC or anybody what I was going to do because I knew they'd shut me down. So I'm up there, and he comes up and he sees the roof of the house on fire. I knew it was going to burn out in seconds, but he didn't. He runs and he grabs the fire extinguisher. Frank, what are you doing? We're almost done with the house. You're going to burn it down. I said, Joe, relax. I'm rehearsing for the grand unveiling.
Awesome. That would be the 6 o'clock news story. $17.5 million waterfront masterpiece burned down by crazy man with a flamethrower.
Oh yeah.
Not that.
Well, you got Tony. You got to tune in this Saturday, because this Saturday I'm going to actually announce the date, because I haven't announced the actual date of the grand unveiling. I'm going to do that Saturday. I'm going to do it live. I'm going to do it on Facebook. The flamethrower will be back, and I'm going to be at a different location. The two girls will be back. We're in different outfits. It's going to be good.
You're going to announce that at 10 a.m. on Saturday, right?
10 a.m. on Saturday. Yep.
Where do people, you mentioned a couple times, where do people find you? On Instagram, you are the Frank McKinney, right? And on Facebook, it's just Frank McKinney. Anywhere else they can find you? Any places they should go to learn more about you?
Those are the social media places. My website is very up to date. It's very good. It's just frank-mckinney.com. Frank dash, not underscore, but frank-mckinney.com. Most of the stuff you can find there. You can, like, social is a lot more current. The web page, you can go tour all these houses I've built. You can see the villages in Haiti. You can actually read sample chapters of the books I've written. If you want to buy one of the books, you can donate to there's 74 different donation options at our Caring House Project page, which is on my web page, starting from a $4.75 chicken all the way up to people who donate for an entire village at close to $300,000. So yeah, spend some time on the web page. But really the current stuff, the day-to-day stuff, is going to be found on either Instagram or on Facebook.
That's great, Frank. It's it's been so awesome to learn so much about you. And what we do at the end of our show is we're sitting at a diner having coffee. Someone's got to pay the check, and this has been so worthwhile. I am paying the check for this one. So this podcast is completely on me. And we also have to thank all our sponsors, which I just did right there, because we have none. So what everybody should do is go over. Everyone should go over to the Caring House Project Foundation. Give a penny, give $1, give $5, give something over there, because it's a great foundation that does great work. And it's been great having the vulnerable, transparent, and very authentic, I did it in reverse of ATV, Frank McKinney on today. I really appreciate you having you here, Frank.
I can't wait to see you back out there. Now I have to wait till your kids are in college to see you back at Badwater.
Yeah, probably. One, my oldest is down to 2 colleges to choose from, and then the youngest, who's a junior in high school this year, she'll be off the year after. So maybe after that, we'll see what happens. I've registered for a bunch of ultras recently and had to bail out of them so I could take the kids to look at colleges and do stuff. But I'll get back out there with you.
You've got 7 finishes, right?
I do. 7 for 7, 09 to 2015.
It's funny. You have 7. I have 7. I keep trying, but my number's not going up. So you're doing the smart thing. You're not pounding the shit out of your body. When you come back out there, well, assuming I finish this year, I'll have 8. So then you'll come out in the next year. You'll have 8, and maybe someday we'll get to 10 together.
That sounds like a plan. I'm in for that.
All right, Tony. Thanks for Ruel. Thank you for putting this together, and let me know when it's out, and we'll share it.
Yeah,
Absolutely,
we're going to try to get
Frank,
this out quick. Yeah, and we're going to next week we're going to have Derek Murphy on here, who is the creator of the Marathon Investigation website. So that should be a fun and interesting conversation with him. Thanks again, Frank. Really appreciate you being here. Ruel, I'm paying the check, so we're all good.
All right. On behalf of Tony Portera, I am Ruel Abram signing out. Thanks for spending time here in the greasy spoon of ultra running, the Ultra Diner. that you heard at the top of the show and that you're hearing now at the end is the song Candy Wine by the band Dorothy Lane. Dorothy Lane is a band out of Martinez, California. And I wanted to thank them for being able to share their music on this podcast. So please do check out dorothylanemusic.com for more about the band, more about their music, where they're performing, follow them on social, and most importantly, support the band, buy their music, and share. Thanks, Dorothy Lane, and thanks, Diners, for tuning in and stopping by.
Hello. I guess I'm the only one here at the moment. It is the host recording. I am dialed in. And that makes two participants. That is essentially me and myself. Tony just messaged me that he is dialing in.
Hello, hello.
Hello, is this John?
Who?
John Turturro?
Who's John? Is Frank in yet or no?
Not yet. It's just you and Ruel and the other guy with the long last name that will take too long in the podcast to pronounce.
Hey, Frank.
Hello. Hey, Tony.
He's Frank McKinney. What's up? You never met my friend Ruel. He's the brains behind the operation.
Hi, Ruel.
Hi, Frank. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
How's it going, Frank? Good?
It's going good. It's going really good down here.
Your daughter's on fire, running for president. She's everywhere.
I know. I don't know where she gets the politics thing because I don't like it. But I think she's more into it for the leadership than the politics.
Well, she got involved straight away, right? Because this is she's a sophomore now, right? So
she's actually a junior.
Is she really?
Yeah, she'll be a senior next year. So she's running for president as a senior.
As a senior. And last year was the first. So this year she's like the vice president, right?
This year she's the vice president. Actually, her freshman year she was a senator for the College of Communication. So she's been involved in the student government from the time she got there. Crazy.
Oh, incredible. I can't believe she's going to be a senior.
Yeah, I know. I know. We won't probably see her this summer. She'll be in New York with an internship. She was there last summer, living there by herself.
Where's she going to be? In the city?
Yeah, she'll be in the city. She probably won't make it to Badwater. She was there. She was a fixture at Badwater since she was 6, and the last couple of times she hasn't been there because she's kind of over it, I think.
Yeah, we'll when we record, we'll talk a little bit about that. But if she needs anything while she's in New York, just let me know because my whole family here. We're only a train ride away.
I will tell her that. I will definitely tell her that.
Oh yeah, anything at all. If she runs into some trouble with something, or she just needs anything, or my wife goes to the city. Jeanette does for court every now and then and depositions, but it's like 40-minute train ride from Grand Central to where we are. So.
Okay. God, appreciate that offer.
There you go. Uncle Tony to the rescue.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, Frank, too. My youngest daughter, Allison, keeps, whenever I mention your name, she keeps saying that you still owe her and that you're supposed to build her a house because one of the years at Badwater, you had the competition where somebody had to pick like the closest to your time. And she was like 7 or 8 or something like that. She was young too. And she said some ridiculous time, like, I don't know, it was like 8 hours or something like that. And that's a year that you had to stop. I think it was the year with your heart or whatever. And she's like, well, I was the closest, so I win. And he said he would build me a house in the store. So
that's right.
You owe us.
That's
man.
so
you
funny.
Owe us, man.
I think I did pull out after like 8 hours. You're right. So
you did. She was the closest. And like, so I think,
oh my God.
South Ocean, you should just write the deed for South Ocean to her, and then we're all set.
Oh my God! If she were here to see that, she would make Daddy buy that for her. I tell you, it is the best I've ever done. I mean, by far.
We're going to talk about that too, but I feel like a little bit out a little bit out of my price range. I mean, if it was 13 million instead of 17.5 million, maybe. Right?
Listen, what I've learned, Tony, somebody who can afford 13 million can afford 17 million. So let's try to make it work.
That's very true. That's very true. That's very true. Oh, all right. So I will. I'll go ahead and
tell me a little bit about your podcast before we get going. What's your what's the thesis? What's the focus?
So it's basically just like, and Ruel, you can interrupt me if you want. So Ruel created this kind of idea, right? And it's basically called the Ultra Diner. So it's as if we're sitting in a diner having a cup of coffee and maybe breakfast, and just shooting the crap about you and what you've done and your where you came from and stuff like that. And we don't have to necessarily talk about running or stuff, but we'll focus on that, and we'll kind of like talk a little bit about your business and your and the Caring House Foundation and what it does and stuff like that, and just kind of get into a little bit about like who is Frank McKinney and what makes him tick and all that kind of stuff.
Ultra runners in cars having coffee, something like that.
It could be something like that.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
That's a good concept, guys. I like it.
But if we go off topic, though, that's okay too. Like we could talk about anything you want. So
okay,
yeah,
So whatever. I usually am stuck with doing the introduction. So. Okay.
Now, Ruel, have you gone to our website and seen kind of some of the stuff I'm involved in, or is this just new for you?
I follow you on Facebook, and I started poking around just last night, and started noticing the book titles and catching a trailer or two online.
Okay, good.
So, so you're all over the place, and I know that you have a flamethrower, so I won't mess with you.
I do have a flamethrower. It's coming back this Saturday when I announced the date of the grand unveiling. Yeah, it took a lot to find that thing, but I got it. I got it in Miami in some seedy gun shop.
That's awesome.
That's funny. You need a permit for that?
You know what? It's crazy. So going into it, I've never been in a gun store. I don't own a gun. I don't trust myself with a gun. Nilsa has a gun. So I've never been inside one. And with all the gun rules and laws and stuff, and I'm in this crummy neighborhood, I find it online. It's like the last one in the state of Florida, supposedly. That's what they tell me. And it was when I got there. I had to buy the demo, like the demo flamethrower. But anyway, so I was expecting to sign all this paperwork, and they did tell me over the phone that I didn't have, there was no cooling off period where I had to wait, 3 days to get it. So the only document they had me sign, and Tony's a lawyer, you'll completely relate to this. I had to sign I guess it was a release or a waiver or something where I was self-verifying that I was sane. I was verifying that I was sane. I had my sanity. There's like 4 questions about my sanity, and like, who the hell? As long as you say you're sane, you can have a flamethrower.
We have to have that on the podcast. We have to talk about that. That's hysterical.
Because I'm like a you got a closet weatherman. I'm a closet lawyer, and I love law. And I sometimes even in the past when I didn't have a lawyer who worked for me, I had a pseudonym. His guy's name was Carl LeMay, Lamet. He was my in-house lawyer, but it was me on the phone. Like I would make it up, like he was, it was a make believe person, and I'd pretend like I was a lawyer. So I read the whole document top to bottom, and I had to laugh to myself. I'm like, you guys are basically asking me to sign and verify that I myself am sane, and okay, no problem. I sign it. I walk out the door with a flamethrower. It was insane. No pun intended.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's funny. So we'll definitely talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. We are recording, Frank. If the system didn't notify you when you dialed in.
I'm ready.
Oh, it's recording already? All right.
Yeah.
I'll do a little introduction, and then we'll get right into it. All right.
Okay.
Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Go ahead. All right. Here we go.
This is another Coffee with Heavy Cream production.